What's up, guys? Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to the Finding Hope podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Bundy, and today I am so excited, you guys. I have been wanting to bring this guest on and talk about this topic since before I even started my podcast. So, literally, the biggest God thing. Lynsey is here today with us. She is a former missionary and model and is now a certified life and health coach and physical trainer, which is so cool. Her heart and vision is to see people come alive in their God-given identity and co-create the life of their dreams with God. Literally, if you're not wanting to live that out, you're doing life wrong. Lynsey does it all. So welcome to the podcast.
Boosting me up. Okay. Take it. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And I know this is the first thing that we bonded over was just like, what the heck? You love Jesus and fitness and wellness and all of the holistic things. So it's really exciting to finally be able to go more in depth about it.
Absolutely. And you guys don't really know this about me because I haven't shared it a ton, but I'm all into holistic living. Like, that's all I do. I grew up with natural medicine doctors doing everything just in the way that I feel God intended. And I am so passionate on my own. And so it was so cool to be able to bond with another woman who is so knowledgeable, has studied it so much, is able to educate on it, and also understands where it comes from biblically and just the importance of not only living a healthy life to live a healthy life, but the blessings that we get to experience when we actually step into the fullness of living in the way God designed us to. So I'm so excited because literally, like, holistic living is something I could probably talk about for the rest of my life and never run dry. And like I said, I've just been wanting to bring somebody on that I trusted so much before I branched into including health and wellness and nutrition and lifestyle and workouts into more of upcoming episodes, because I wanted us to have a really good, solid understanding and well to draw from of the importance of it, what it even is, what it looks like, and the incredible things you get to experience when you step into it.
When God designed the body, everything he designed had a purpose. So to not have insight on that, it's like we're missing out on 50% of what he designed for us, you know? So I'm so excited to be here too. By the way, it's totally a God thing.
Totally a God thing. And do you want to tell us just like a little bit about you so that way we have an idea of where you're coming from and your knowledge?
Yeah, so I won't spend too much time. I'll keep an eye out since we're women. Two women
talking together.
danger.
It's danger. We set up to film this over an hour ago, and we've been straight talking just for an hour and a half, catching up, and we still barely scratched the surface. So
It's true. Okay. So I am a life and health coach, and I was a missionary for like 6 years. I didn't intend to do that. It was, I was just so sick and tired of being sick and tired of my life. Yeah. And thinking that like life was happening to me, and that's like a Tony Robbins quote,
Yes.
and not for me. So it's kind of like a victim mindset, you know, you go through life and you just take what comes. And so when God finally got a hold of me, I went and did a DTS with YWAM, and it changed my life and rocked my world. Little did I know, I got bit by a tick. Like, I didn't even know what a tick was. I got bit by a tick. Shout out Lyme disease. But I lived with mystery symptoms and in complete illness for 10 years, undiagnosed.
Wow.
And I had no idea. So I was doing missions. I'm traveling the world, you know, doing all the things. And I wasn't going to let anything ruin my vibe.
Obviously.
You know, but long story short, I grew up as an athlete. I ate whatever I wanted. I did whatever I wanted with my body because I was like 9% body fat.
Yeah, you're like, I look great. That doesn't matter what I do to my body. I look the way I want to look. That's all that matters.
Exactly. And felt the way I wanted to feel because I had a lifestyle that was so active. My body was meant for competition. It was meant as a machine. That was kind of my identity. Like, my body's a tank. I can do whatever I want with it. But then I was on the beach in Florida, got bit by this tick, and I didn't know what a tick was. And basically, long story short, I got the ring. I was freaking out, and I was hitting my leg. And I was like, I feel like Spider-Man right now. I feel like something's injecting itself into my bloodstream.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but I had no idea like what it was. I was just like, oh, it's just another bug bite. And I freaked out because I thought it was a spider. Pulled it off and it went in my body, which shout out. If you ever get bit by a tick, get rid of it properly, go to the hospital and get meds. Like, it's the only way to prevent it. And little did I know, like, that would ruin the rest of my life in terms of quality of life. It was like I went from being invincible to having no health.
I think it's interesting the way you had viewed your body then and what it was for. And Lynsey also modeled for a long time. And so your body, I think it just was used in so many different ways that made you think it had to be a certain way. And whether that was like the endurance part and the fitness side of it, or that it looked a certain way and you were being booked and paid for literally just maintaining whatever shape and size that you wanted to. And so it's so interesting hearing this and like knowing Lynsey and just the ups and downs that have come with that. And just being a woman, your body changes so much. Like, it's so cool to see where your head is now and the knowledge you have now and just the total 180 that you've done.
Oh my God. The 180 was literally insane. I truly, like, my body, like you said, it was for my job. It was for work. It was to get me through life. I also didn't have a lot of financial support growing up. So I'd put myself through college, work 10,000 jobs, destroy my liver before Christ, of course. And if you know what I'm saying. So it had taken a ton of damage and it was just like a machine. Yeah. Now I got my life back. Like we'll get into it.
Yeah.
But I had no idea that I took for granted, like, how important the body is in order to even live out our calling with God. Yeah. And because you don't know what you got till it's gone. So now I love to help people prevent sickness and disease. Obviously, Lyme is a chronic illness that's supposed to be the rest of your life, but in Jesus' name, I believe I will be healed.
You will.
And it's not and I believe I'm already healed in Jesus' name. But definitely, like, it did its job, and now I got my life back 10 years later. And yeah, we're going to get into that.
Yeah. So I want to transition into this verse that I think is so beautiful and just a good base of understanding more of what holistic living is. In Genesis 1:29, it says, "Then God said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food." I personally got a little thrown off when I first heard the term holistic, and this because I had absolutely zero knowledge on what holistic living was. Even though I said I grew up doing things the natural way, I never had a word for it. And I remember the first time somebody said that word to me, I thought it was witchcraft or something. Like, I remember talking on the phone with my mom, and I was like, yeah, like, they seem super great, and like, I loved everything they were doing, but they're holistic. And she was like, Kayla, we're holistic. Like, what? And so clearly that's not what it is. But can you just kind of define what holistic living is for our audience? If they do know what it is, if they don't, if they're in that middle, like, that seems weird to me.
Yeah, a lot of people get weirded out when I say it too. They're like, okay, whatever that like woo-woo stuff is. So that's real. It's really recognizing that, like, the first commandment, like, it's love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and strength. And what that is it's that interconnectedness from your body, your mind, and your spirit. So they're all made by God, they're from God. And so it's taking every aspect of your being and saying, this belongs to God, and I will honor it. And I will, like, it is, my body is worship, my mind is worship. Everything that I do is worship unto God. And we only have one life to live. So it's all stewarding. And it's like, how am I supposed to even do what God's called me to do if I'm not nurturing my physical health, my mental health, my emotional health, my spiritual health? They're all connected. Basically, it's integrating all those into one and putting it in alignment with God's will and his original design back in the garden. In the garden, we were in perfect unity. We were all healthy. There was no sickness, there was no disease, there was just perfect relationship with God. So it's really being restored back to God's perfect will.
I agree. To have a holistic approach, you have to include the spiritual aspect, because holistic is a way of doing things way more natural, way more stripped down, way more utilizing the things on this earth to either heal us, maintain us, restore us, reshape us, renew us, all of that. But you also have to have that with your mind. And it's so cool that's also why we bonded. It's cool to find other people that know the Lord, that live a holistic lifestyle, because I completely agree that is truly living out that commandment, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And even to not, the other commandment, to not have any other gods before me. Because when you're reliant on all these other things and you don't know how to take care of your body and your mind, and you can't process things in the way we were created to process, like, a lot of that is, I mean, if you look in the Garden of Eden, so quickly that apple became her God. And she desired that and putting that into her body more than actually honoring God with her heart, mind, and body.
And having the knowledge of good and evil is what she wanted. And Satan said to her, do you want to be with God or be like God? So she said, I want to be like God. So she chose to be her own God. And when our body is, like, it's so interconnected to God because it's created by him. I just want to say this too. It's really easy to become a Christian or call yourself a Christian, and you become so spiritually fat. And this is what I've seen a lot as a missionary is you eat the worst food. And they're so spiritually full, but their physical body is eliminating them from what God wants to do in their life and where they can even go, because their body won't even take them there. So it's not to be condemning, but it's just like, God wants us to live long, to live well. Like how Paul says, it's better for me to leave, than it is for me to live on this earth, because there's sufferings. Like, when we're not taking care of our body, how are we supposed to even have impact on the world if it's limiting us?
Exactly. And I always reflect on this verse it talks about in the Bible, where it says, my people will perish for a lack of knowledge. And I have my own thoughts on this, but I'm curious, kind of, and this is a little off topic, but since you brought it up, what is a good way to sort of break that barrier for those people out there that, because I know a lot of them too, where they have the most beautiful hearts for the Lord, are absolutely on fire for God. And then when it comes to what they put in their body, they're like, well, God will keep me fine. I'll eat In-N-Out, I'll eat McDonald's, I'll eat Doritos. It's fine if I'm broke and poor and I can just put whatever I want in my body, because God's going to keep me doing what I need to do.
What do I say to that?
I
say that at some point, and these are people I've done ministry with that say are in that place, they come to me and they're like, hey, so I realize I'm finding identity in the way I look. Like, I'm the big person in the room, and there's a sense of identity that they found in that, and not caring. Or maybe what's crazy is I healed my body when I was the brokest. I was a missionary. I had no money, no doctors. I had no one that could help me or even identify the illness that I had. So people always say their excuse is money or resources. And the way that I even got that knowledge was just being in the Word.
Wow.
And it's like it has to come from God. And I can, as someone who is in that wellness space, like I can share with them all these things, and God can lead you to it. But it's like, what's the impact that you want to have? Do you want to be there for your kids long term? Do you want to be there to support your wife or husband one day? Do you want to go after the call of God and be sick the whole time? I went after the call of God and I was sick the entire time. And I was physically looked healthy. Yeah. So I think that it has to be a heart posture of like, it's an act of worship. Your body is a temple. And it's like, when we go into the temple, it like the physical church, are we going to defile it and throw paint on the wall? Like, no. We're going to want to honor it, and we're going to want to clean up after ourselves. And it's the same thing with our body. Like, we want to treat it as if this is the one home that I get. And one thing that the Lord told me was like, I can either choose to sit and wallow in my sickness, or I can sit and wallow in just being unhealthy and the skin issues I was having, in the lack of energy, the being bedridden. I can sit and wallow, or I can co-create my life with God, and I can choose to live a better life. I had to sit there being in my depression because when you get sick, you go through like stages of grief because you lose your quality of life. It's really breaking like a victim mentality, and B, identity, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That makes so much sense. And I love how you said it a couple times. I mean, you had so much good stuff that I want to touch on, but I love how you said it's an act of worship, because I don't believe that the people that are really chasing after the Lord's heart and filling their bodies with this crap, I know that they aren't doing that in a way to dishonor God. Yeah. And I think though what it needs to be spoken a lot about in the church, especially with these missionaries, especially with young kids in the church, with the food that's brought to church, is realizing, hey, actually it is dishonoring to the Lord to treat your body in this way. And he has given us, I love how you said, this is your one home. And in anything he gives you, when he gives you a child, when he gives you a parent, when he gives you a spouse, you want to treat it with such care and such respect and honor and love. Pixie is my world. She does not have a single thing that will ever taint her. And it's the same way that it's actually a beautiful way you can worship the Lord in a different way than you ever would have thought. And that's where I found such transformation as well of, yes, I still love worshiping God in songs, in praises, but when you can worship the Lord with your body and knowing every single thing you're putting in it, you are doing to better his kingdom, and you're doing to better of yourself as a vessel, it is so, so cool to see how much he will use that and how much more you can do, and how like greater the impact sometimes is when you're so healthy physically.
We're not saying, by the way, you have to be healthy all the time. Like,
absolutely not.
Yeah, this is just like, it's just saying, like, let's say you are struggling with some major health issues, or let's say you are sick or battling anything, or chronically you have mystery illnesses, or just things holding you back in your health. It's saying that like God gave us food, like to a lot of the Old Testament was like the Jews their practices were around food, but it was all homegrown. It was like not tainted. And they had literally a celebration of feasts. Yeah. And so it's like the original design of food was always to be for celebration. And so food is beautiful when it's used for the right reason, but when it's hindering you from your future, then that's what we're sharing on. So just know that there's no condemnation. It's not about being perfect all the time. Like, it's really about like, what's the goal you're trying to accomplish in your life, in your heart, in your dreams that God's put in your heart, and how can we get you there the like best way, where you have the clearest mind, the clearest heart, and because food can contribute to depression. It can contribute to your anxiety, your brain fog, ADD. Like the first moment I started cutting out even processed foods, brain fog gone. I immediately lost 20 pounds of just straight inflammation, and I could not concentrate. I was known in my Bible school as the girl with the memory of a goldfish. Like it was, they were like, you are so ADD. It's crazy. I think you're on crack. So it's like, it's really crazy how much food can actually, at least, in the country we live in, can influence your ability to just exist and live.
And I won't touch too much on this because we'll get to it later and you guys can do your own research. I can leave podcasts and people that I really trust. But the way that food genuinely affects and changes the chemistry in your brain is absolutely crazy. So it is most of the time, all of like Alzheimer's, depression, anxiety, ADHD, it is linked to what you're putting in your body and the foods you're eating. And so, yeah, it's not about looking a certain way and being perfect all the time. It's just also realizing that, hey, if I'm being careful with what I watch, because I don't want that to get into my brain and my heart, I should also be careful with what I'm eating because I don't want that to get into my brain and heart.
Biblically, this is just pure Bible, okay? Not even my own opinion, because my opinions as a human will always fail me, but the Bible will not. So basically, sickness and sin came from like sin, right? So when Jesus came to the cross, like he was desiring to reconcile us back to wholeness. God just wants us to be united with him and to be made whole in this life. And his last words were, go into all the world, make disciples, and what was that last part? Make disciples, right?
Baptizing them.
Yeah. So his whole point, but you can't do that if you're hindered again. So the whole point of sickness and dealing with health issues and just wellness in general, like it's that in John 19:30, it says that he did a finished work on the cross. So we don't actually have to live in this torment. And there are people that I know that have been healed of Lyme disease. I have prayed for so many people to be healed. They have received healing. And I love that. I want people to experience that freedom. So essentially, like, Jesus took that on. He took on sickness. He took on death. Sin is to the soul what sickness is to the body. So by Jesus embodying that, he took it all away. So we now have access to heavenly realms and authorities that we never had access to in the Old Testament.
So cool.
So whether God heals, it's always his intention to heal, right? There's so many different ways that can happen, and it doesn't have to be just physical healing. Like I think that it's easy for people to say like, oh, well, you don't have enough faith, or, oh, is there unforgiveness in your life? Is there brokenness? Like, it doesn't just mean that our paradigm of healing has to be physical. It's so much more than that, and God cares more about my heart and who I am and how I love than taking away this illness. And so I believe that a lot of people don't talk about long suffering, that the number one thing is that Jesus wants to do when he heals is not to do the instant work. He always wants to heal, but what he really wants to do is make sure that our heart is set on things above, that we are fully present in where we are, and that we understand that Jesus endured the cross. God endured long suffering for the Jews and for the Gentiles to be restored. So the greatest call is that we long suffer with God, and we just knowing like, I go to heaven one day and I have spiritual access on this life on earth in a broken and fallen world to be able to access that and bring that into the world. So just know, if you're not healed yet, or if you are contending, I am always contending, and I always believe I'm healed and I'm healing, but it's not, I understand that the big picture of God is so much better than whether I'm healed right now or not.
You wouldn't be here today talking on any of this had you not experienced that time in your life where you had to learn how to heal your body. And all of the information you have now, it probably wasn't even any thoughts you had at that time in your life. As a son and daughter, we also have a responsibility to our Father to learn in that process. And I think it's so cool when our parents, sometimes they punish us, or sometimes they let us make the mistake. They know we're going to eventually learn. And there's that freedom. And like, that is the Lord. He isn't forceful. Like, he is a father. And sometimes he lets us learn these things. And sometimes we go through these sicknesses, these illnesses, these depressions to learn, hey, okay, maybe the way I've been living my life, it's not exactly cohesive to the fullness that I know the Lord has for me. And so maybe I need to actually like reflect and figure that out. And when a kid's riding their bike, it might fall down a few times, and you're there to constantly help and guide and encourage. And eventually that child learns how to do it on their own. Whereas if you're just holding on that entire time, it's never going to learn what he actually needs to do to continue to keep riding.
Yeah. There's actually a quote when I got certified that they said, and it was, when your body's always speaking, and when something goes off, and this means whether you're breaking, even studying physical therapy and physical training, when something in the body, a bone's broken, a tendon, a ligament, or anything, so your skin's flaring up, you're losing hair, it's literally your body telling you a sign. Hey, we're speaking. We need help. Like, something needs to change. It's a signal. It's not saying like, oh, woe is me. I'm going to live with severe acne the rest of my life. I'm going to live with this thing forever. No. If I would have listened to my body when I got bit by the tick, or when I was going to modeling events, eating the smorgasbord, and I would go, I'd have my tight dress on and my belly looked like I was 9 months pregnant. And that everyone would tell me, like, Lynsey, that's a big deal. Like, your belly is huge right now.
And what everyone wants to hear.
But I thought it was funny because I'd be like, look at me, haha. But it was my body for 10 years. I was abusing, and I was telling it, no, shut up. You'll conform to me and how I want to live. But it was my body telling me, we need help. And now I've gotten tests for my gut, and I've gotten all the blood work. Turns out, like, my liver was shut down, so I wasn't even detoxifying things. It turns out that my gut health is triple what the numbers should be. And these are like core functions to the body. So when anything's inflamed, when you're like, or even when you break a bone, what's crazy is that bone break is protecting you. When when you have pain in your neck, that's your back telling you we need to be strengthened. Like, wow. There's always a core function and reason to it. Even cancer, like, cancer is telling you we are in toxic overload. We need to be taken care of. So wow. There is a purpose to every single illness and in the body. And so it's speaking always.
Oh my gosh, that is so fascinating and so cool. I love that you said, like, the body's always speaking. And it's interesting because I definitely think that when it comes to, like, I notice it on my skin, or if I'm bloated or things like that, things that are much more minor. But it's interesting that you say that on such a major scale. And I totally get that. Totally makes sense. If you guys have listened to my podcast, you know that last summer I had an insane, like, out of the blue injury and ended up severing tendons in my foot, and was handicapped. Yeah, she's looking at my scar. Basically it was out of commission for 2 or 3 months. And hearing you say this, it's so funny because I'm all about, like, yeah, listen to your body. And at that time, I mean, it really was. I do think there was so much purpose in it. And it was my body screaming at me. And I know the previous few months leading up to when that incident happened, I was just pushing nonstop and so overworked, so just giving everything, all that I had. And I needed a break, and I knew I needed a break, and I just refused to take one. And well, my body really was like, here we are. We're forcing you to sit down and you actually have to take a break now. What are just basic ways to get started in holistic living or that approach?
It has to be personal. Like, I can't just tell you what to do. Even if I am coaching clients, I'm like, I can lead a horse to water, but I can't force you to drink. So if you feel any ounce of conviction and like, oh, this makes sense. And what's crazy too, I just got a genetic test back, total side note. And I was able to like put Lyme in remission because of epigenetics, which that's the genes in your body that can be manipulated. Whoa. So I basically through epigenetics, I was able to put Lyme into remission, not even knowing I had it. Wow. But genetics can play, depending on the genetic factors that you do have, they can play up to 30 to 70% of your health. But even if you have bad genetic markings and factors, you still have that wiggle room of up to 70% due to epigenetics.
Whoa.
So
that is fascinating.
Yeah, it's like there are things that are predetermined in our health, and so even if you get a genetic test, it tells you exactly what diseases that you're prone to, whether that's like mental, Alzheimer's or whatever. So it's really cool to know that, like, number one, God has to speak to us, and then there's practical things to follow. So first and foremost, if you're like, oh, this is really striking a nerve with me, like, get with God, go to the word, seek it out. And because the goal is longevity.
Yes.
Right. And that's what God wants for us. So the number one thing is how I got into this, like, because I ate whatever I wanted. I did whatever I wanted. Right. I was in the book of Daniel when I was doing my Bible school. And it was like mini seminary. And we went through Genesis to Revelation chronologically and then made commentary on the Bible. And if it wasn't for the word, I would not probably be here. I'd probably be in a bed still.
Wow.
So I was in the book of Daniel, and I was like, I was so alienated because of sickness, and everyone thought I was faking. And it was the most brutal time of my life because no one understood me because of the health issues I was going through. And but when we got in the book of Daniel, I was like, God, how did you design the body? I can't even make it to class. Like, wow. I can barely focus. I'm almost failing Bible school. Like, what? How do you even fail Bible school?
It's always great. Yeah. I failed Bible school. Fun fact about it. Yeah. It's so funny. She didn't fail, by the way.
Yeah, I did it. I made it through. But I was in the book of Daniel, I was asking God, and I was like, if these guys went through the fire, like, and they're eating fruits and veggies, keep in mind, as an athlete, I grew up with just my brother and my dad. My diet was fat burger, fat steak. I was the girl that could out eat all the guys, competed with the guys, so that my food was a massive part of my identity. So the Lord had to break that first. And then once I got in the word, I was like, oh, they survived on plants. So I started with the Daniel fast.
Wow.
I lost 20 pounds in the first month. My face, like, completely looked different.
Wow.
I had cystic acne all over my face. Didn't have a zit in my life, but I had cystic acne on my face, chest, back. I was losing hair. I would wake up with, it looked like hives with like worms coming out of my body. And it was just the worst time ever. But God really, and I think because of modeling and my childhood, you have to really ask, like, what's my relationship with food?
Yeah.
Like, and what are the beliefs I'm believing around food? And God had to come in and break all of that. And so then I was like, oh, what was it like in the garden? And I started looking at, nothing was defiled. And all I did was eat from the ground, healthy. And that's a whole nother conversation about what vegetables are healthy.
Oh, exactly. And where they're being sourced.
Yeah.
The soil is so important.
Yeah. So I think God, number one. Number two, obviously food and lifestyle factors can heal up to 80% of all chronic health issues.
Wow.
And that's not coming from me. That's coming from a functional medicine practitioner that is spirit filled that I work with. I do her digital marketing, and she teaches me beyond even what I learn on my own because she's so knowledgeable.
Wow.
So what you put in your body, you are a premium car.
So
you deserve premium gas.
Yes, you
not
do.
the cheap gas, so that you don't have gas.
True.
No, it's real.
So true.
Obviously, movement detoxifies your body insanely, and just gets everything moving.
Yeah.
And then
Movement moves.
yeah, movement moves things around. Getting free of emotional barriers is the fourth thing that is major. If you have trauma in your life, it will store itself in your body. And you can reference this from The Body Keeps Score.
Yes, I love that book. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, huge fan.
And all of these successful people all talk about how the mind plays the biggest role. And there are so many studies. It doesn't matter what industry it is. Everyone talks about in their books, the first thing they talk about are these studies of the mind, and how people who were given a diagnosis and then had the same illness, had the same diagnosis, and the people who got the sugar pill were more healed than the people who were given the actual pill.
And you can do everything right, and your mind can be so unhealed from things, and it's like, well, none of this is working. And I've definitely been there in seasons of like, especially the way I grew up and being super athletic as well. I have walked through seasons in my life where I'm eating everything. I know exactly how to heal everything that I'm currently feeling, facing, dealing with. I'm moving. I'm doing everything I need to do for my body, taking care of it. I'm in the Word, going to church. I'm doing the things. And when I have trauma that I have not yet healed from, and I will say it's not like, oh, if you're out there and you're like, oh yeah, I just know I have all this unresolved trauma. For me, I didn't know I had unresolved trauma. It took a lot of different things, different people, different therapists, different tools to even realize my body had held on to so much trauma. And I just want to encourage you to maybe think about those things. And it really took a lot for me to even accept that, oh yeah, maybe I've gone through trauma in my life. I just never thought I did. And then looking back at things, I was like, oh my gosh, wow, like that was like really traumatizing. That's stuck with me. And there's been a lot. So if you are feeling like I'm doing so many things right, or if you feel like you're still so held back in a lot of ways, really seek that out from the Lord and ask Him to reveal those parts. Because I held so much of that in my body, and I notice now, after being aware of it, I still always react to my body before my mind. And I can heal in my mind and I can be totally fine, but I'll notice, oh, my body is still so hypersensitive to this or to that trigger or to that person.
Like you can do all the things, like you said. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're not dealing with it. And I actually had a friend who she did therapy for 10 years.
Wow.
And I kept telling her, like, dude, it's your mindset. There's unconscious things that you're not aware of that are holding you back and keeping this from healing, you know?
Yeah.
And she got a life coach, and the life coach, life coaching kind of, it's funny because therapy it's a lot slower. Yeah. Both have their benefits. And she was like, this one thing of sozo, this one session of sozo, and this like few life coaching sessions, because it's all mindset, has healed like 10 years of trauma that was not revealed in therapy. The mind is so powerful, And there are so many things subconsciously that are controlling us. I had a girl with cancer, one of my friends, and I would be like, oh, I'm so sick. I'm so sick. And that was my identity. I'd be like, I don't know what to do. And she rebuked me. She was like, Lynsey, you claim sickness over your body. It's not denying that it's happening, but you also can't make it like when God spoke, he spoke the world into existence. Yeah. So there's so much power in what we say. Whatever I speak, I'm manifesting into my life. Yeah. And because prayer manifests the presence of God. And I spent 6 years in my Bible every day when I was a missionary. And it was like 4 hours a day because that was my job, yeah. And being in the word, getting truth for my situation. And even psychologists have said that a positive mindset can literally bring healing. Yeah. So it's like declaring over my body that this is not my portion. My God is a healer. That was when the depression left. Wow. And like symptoms went with it. I would do visualization every day, and I'd visualize me and Jesus, and I'd be like, you got me. Like, you're with me. You are for me. And it was like all the pain leaves my body. And this is like a practice I do today that like it's really healing. And it's possible to command our bodies to be in alignment with God. But we have to choose it. And that's the co-creating part that I talk about is like, but you can't co-create without community, which is the next thing. So if you're not in community, when you're isolated, you will believe every thought that you think. But when you're in community, like I'm a part of this creative Christian community in LA, and every week we meet and we pray and prophesy over each other. Everyone pours out their heart. And also sin grows in the dark. It does. So if my thoughts are telling me that I'm not good enough, I'm the worst, and there were so many thoughts that I was believing that were wrong, and I would say them in my group, no shame. I got the blood of Jesus on my issues.
You're like, it doesn't matter, I'll tell you. Yeah. It's so funny you're talking about this. I just recently did an episode all on confession, the power of it, because I was like, it's so nice. And my friend and I, we've been texting each other, and we'll be like, I'm thinking these thoughts, it's giving sin. And it's so helpful, because it's like, I don't mind saying it. I have Jesus. Like, he covers me. I want it out.
Me, I'm like, those are my people, you know? So I think the biggest thing is like, I don't let anything hide in the darkness. Like, I really just give everything over to God, even if it's like the most embarrassing thing. I think being in community, because that combats isolation, it combats any lie that is in your brain, it combats like everything. And then lastly would be practicing gratitude. Like, I just started praying the 1 Thessalonians 5:18 prayer, like, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Jesus Christ. Again, this is all psychological science. And they talk about how practicing is actually priming. So you're telling your brain, basically your brain has a negative bias. And this is for anyone. So we will always look for the bad. So if you're priming your brain to see good things, you're going to see good things. It's like when God speaks to you something and you start seeing it everywhere. That's literally how our brain is wired. So if we're priming our brain in the morning and we're saying, God, like, this is yours. I love you, that my body belongs to you. Like, everything I give thanks in, because I am on this earth for this short period of time and I want to give it my all. So thank you. And even just every day I'd be like, what is this teaching me? What is this affliction teaching me? And now I know no matter what my healing journey looks like, I'm an overcomer. And that's my portion. It's nothing else. So those are kind of the 5 that define I'd say a holistic lifestyle. So just to reiterate, seek God first, nourish your body, exercise and movement, rest and Sabbath. So be with the Lord, and then community.
2 things I really want to press in that Lynsey just talked about with building community and just speaking things out. I also really want to challenge you in a way to speak out the lies that you might not know our lives. Like, just even speak out the truth that you think is true. Yeah. I know I've seen it in so many of my friends. I've done it myself so many times. For years, I constantly just told myself and everyone I wasn't a runner because I hated it. I was like, I'm not a runner. No, absolutely not. My body doesn't do cardio. Like, that's like, that was like literally what I fully believed about myself. When I changed that and I started being like, no, I'm running, like I'm this, I'm that. I literally just changed my verbiage. It still sucked just as much as it did when I thought I wasn't a runner, but it was crazy how much more my body could do than I ever thought it could. And that's just a small example, but when it comes to making some positive changes, it can be really easy to tell yourself, I'm already eating healthy. I'm already thinking positive thoughts. I'm already going to the gym. I'm already this. And I think get into a community that is going to call you higher and that's going to speak truth. Because I have also just benefited so much from being around people where when I say those things or I say, well, I'm doing everything right. And I actually just had this with one of my girlfriends. So real. And like, I was talking to her about my I was so frustrated. And I was like, I'm not seeing any results. This. And I was telling her everything I was doing. She was able to be like, yeah, you're doing all the things, but maybe try this. And it was something I never, ever had thought about trying. It was something I had heard about, but I was like, again, that's not for me. Like, I already know I don't do that. I think it's wrong. I had my own lies that I had told myself that it was wrong. It's where Satan could have a hold of me. It was not good for me. I had believed these things. And when I was able to be in a community that was so safe that I could speak that out and be like, well, no, I don't think that's right. This is what I think on it. She could actually bring truth into it. Yeah. And so I want to encourage you that it's easy sometimes to like speak out the things, the lies and the dark things in our head, but really challenge yourself to be like, what about the things that I think are actually right and true? Yeah. And question those and get into community, in leadership, in environments, listen to podcasts, read books where it challenges those beliefs. Yeah. Because it's so fascinating. And I see this all the time. I've had friends do this as well, where they are maybe vegan for years and years and years and years. And they're like, this is the only way. Yeah. And then things change in their life and they start questioning things. And all of a sudden, everything that they would go to the grave with what they said has completely changed, complete 180, totally shatters. And I'm not saying one way is better than the other. It's your body and what works for you. But when you get too fixated on a method or way of doing things that you think is right, it might actually be so destructive for you and your personal self.
We all have blind spots, and let me tell you, I am very passionate. So I had a lot from just zeal alone. And
Lynsey's full of zeal. It is the best thing.
It's definitely like, I'm 10 years saved now, and so it's honed in. Like, my husband used to call me a forest fire before, and he's like, now you're like a fire gun. There's an aim to it, and there's wisdom to it. So I honestly, I surrounded myself with mentors and people that could speak into my life, because we all have a nature and a nurture. And a lot of the times our nurture our worldview is our nurture, and it affects everything. And then you're like, but this is what works. And I used to think, because I grew up in Canada, that I was still sick. Wow. Because I was eating the standard American diet. Yeah. They call it the SAD diet. And I was like, I'm not healing. What the heck? This is the way to eat. And then that was when I was like, oh, I had a friend who was like, hey, you look like you're dying. Let me send you to this holistic, he was like a Christian holistic naturopath. And he did an iridology exam, if you've heard of those.
Okay, yeah, a little bit.
They're so crazy. So every again, this is something I learned as a physical trainer too, is that there's something called the kinetic chain in your body. So everything in your muscular skeletal system is connected to everything. So everything works in unison. So even in your eye, they take a picture of your eye, and every like clock of your eye, like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, points to a different organ in your body.
And that is mind blowing.
And it will tell you, it will reveal everything in your health. And so, yeah, he told me you should eat more plant-based foods. You should do this. And I was like, yeah, nah. But it took years of just people who would be like, hey, Lynsey, you should try this. Eventually, like, I think the key to being a follower of Christ is just humility.
Yeah.
And I had to be broken down. And I'm so thankful now, because if it wasn't for humility, I would not be healed. In my Bible school, the number one thing that blew my mind from reading the entire Bible, like front to back, cover to cover, was my favorite verse. And it's in Judges. It's the last verse of the book. And I threw my Bible because I was so grossed out by what happens at the end of that chapter, which I don't even want to reiterate. It's gnarly.
No, I recently, I've been doing a ton of Old Testament reading. It's so good, but it takes you on a journey. Yeah. Like, if you have not read the full Bible, I could not recommend it more, because the amount that you will wrestle with the Lord in ways you never thought you would, it grows you so much.
Yeah. So the last verse of that is, and in those days, everyone did what was right in their own eyes, and they were their own God, basically. And I was like, why is this story in here? And he was like, my teacher was like, read the last verse. And I reread it, and I was like, oh my God, I am my own God. In my own humanity, I will think that I am right. That is the danger of being a human, is we create this subjective truth, and we think that we're right, when really God has a design that is objective. Like, he does not change, but we change. So even when, like you were saying, when I first got into health and wellness, didn't know what I was doing, I was gung-ho vegan. People are like, you're into pseudoscience, you're crazy. I was a little crazy probably about it, because I was like, oh my God, I lost like 40 pounds and I'm healthy and this is crazy. But everyone's body is so different and unique. Like, God has such a beautiful design for the body. And what's crazy is no one's body is the exact same. No. So what works for me doesn't work for someone else. Yeah. So I was like that too. And what healed me was being open to other people's way of living, other practices, and it's having a growth, which leads into our next thing, the body mind connection. And having a growth mindset is the key to becoming a healer and healing, and just even accessing the will of God over your life.
I love that. Oh my gosh. And it's so true, and it kind of touches back to the verse I referenced earlier about how my people will perish for lack of knowledge. And truly, to desire knowledge requires humility. And it's so important. And even, I mean, I learn new things all of the time, and just with our bodies as well in different stages in life, I have found times where I can figure out exactly what works for me and my body and my mind, and it's great. And then things happen, or I move, or environments change, my quality of life changes, where I'm even getting my water or my access to different produce is different. And so and then I have to, okay, now let me seek out a little bit more knowledge on things, because I need to adapt. Like, it's not always going to be this system that it's linear and it never changes. The Lord never changes. He's the only thing that is ever going to be the same yesterday, today, and forever. But I think you have to have a desire for knowledge and that mind-body connection, because if you turn your mind off from learning and that desire, and then you expect your body to continue to grow outside of that little circle that just involves you, it's going to be really, really hard to ever truly evolve in the ways and expand in ways that are just freeing and so beneficial, and just the quality of life is a million times better, and all of those things in your head. And I know it's easy to want to change for one reason, and I think that is so dangerous. And that's something that the more I've gotten into this way of living and this lifestyle, I've seen it truly is fully encompassing. Because if you want to make a change because you don't like the way you look, if you want to make a change because you don't like the way your skin is, that's only ever going to get you so far. Yeah. And it truly does have to come from, okay, let me sit with the Lord in this, because like you said, I mean, no one can get you to change, and no one can force that horse to drink that water when you lead it. Always having that heart posture to humble yourself and learn from it and see the benefits of it, and not just write it off. Because I think it's so easy to just write things off when you're so set in what works for you or your idea of the right way to do something.
You said that to me, actually. We went to like a fitness event together after we had finally connected, and I had never had language for that. But I was talking about my career, and I was like, I don't know what's next. And you said, okay, but maybe the modeling world has changed, but that just means you have to evolve with it. And now I've been applying that to everything. Oh, wow. And it's actually like been a huge part of like the next coaching program I want to put on, being like, okay, I've hit the glass ceiling. Now I must evolve.
And that kind of leads into, just to close out on the mindset stuff and how important that is, what are some just practical things that our audience can do to cultivate that healthy mindset?
Yeah, number one, again, going back to go to God first. Every day for 6 years, I spent that time. Now it's broken up, which I hate, but I would go in the morning, and every lie, I would just brain dump every lie I was feeling, thinking. Maybe someone spoke over me. Wow. And I would say, God, what is your truth? And just and then being in the Word, like the Word literally transformed my mind and surpassed my understanding. And whenever I pray over people, or I'd be going into something new, like there was just this divine deposit. Like even if you don't understand the scripture, it deposits itself. Like it says, the flesh is weak, but the spirit is willing. So it doesn't matter whether you're reading to understand or you think you have to study the word, like just read the word.
Read it.
I would put my Bible on audio Bible and just put the word in me, like shove it in me, Lord, because I need it.
1 Corinthians 6:19-20 says, "Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your bodies." That just kind of moves us into encompassing all of that and living in that fullness and recognizing that, hey, I have my body to steward. And the Bible talks about, if you're faithful with a little, you can be faithful with much. And just like in anything, how I mentioned earlier, if you're given a sibling, if you're given a daughter, if you're given a son, if you're given something to take care of, it holds so much weight and validity. And our bodies are actually something we've been given to take care of. Yeah. And right there it says, we were bought with a price, and our bodies are not our own. Mm-hmm. We have them here to steward them. And there is that responsibility to steward them well and to live in that fullness.
Yeah. And the other point to go off of that is like, without our health, we're so limited in going after what God's called us to do. Mm-hmm. And if we don't have that, then it's like we miss living in the fullness of what God has for us. And I have seen my health literally steal from what God's called me to do. And these last 5 years, 10 years, I spent healing every deposit of doing the thing that I didn't want to do because my flesh wanted to eat that pastry, and that was limiting me. And it got to a point where I started looking at all these things like medicine. And I was like, what do I want more? Do I want a full life? Do I want a quality of life that's full and rich and not that life is always balanced, but that's balanced and I think that being rich is just so much more than monetary. Like, it's my relationships, it's my health, it's who I'm surrounded by. And that goes into like our last point, is just like having wise counsel and having people around you and who you choose as friends, like that they're uplifting you and that they're calling you into that fullness too.
Yeah. So just to summarize, like everything we've been saying and living in this holistic lifestyle, it truly involves at the core just nurturing your physical, your mental, and spiritual health. And the reason is to live in that fullness and the ability to pursue everything that God has called us to do.
I only lose if I give up. Yeah. So, and it's the same thing with our mindset, or everything we've been talking about. You only lose if you give up. But just know that God has given us choice and we are not victims.
I love that. And truly, that's such a good note to end on, because when I met Lynsey, I had no idea she ever walked through any of these health things. She ever currently is experiencing things. She already was such an overcomer, and you are an overcomer. And it's so evident in her life that unless you're listening to this podcast, you would never know all of the things she's overcome, because they really do not identify her. And she walks in that fullness and in who the Lord has said she is, and believing that she is healed and she is restored and she is renewed in Christ. Thank you so much just for coming on and sharing your heart, your story, all of this wisdom. If you guys want more, I know we could talk for hours and hours, but if you want more, please go find Lynsey. She's incredible. You want to share your handles with us, or maybe where to find you? And I'll link in this podcast description all of her stuff as well. And I definitely want to encourage you guys to start just typing in Google or whatever and start researching, start going to the Word and look up Bible verses that go along with kind of what we're talking about. But yeah, if you want to share where to find you.
Yes, definitely on Instagram. It's just Lynsey White Choi. I spell my name funny. You probably won't be able to find it, so she will link it. I should have a YouTube by the time this comes out. And then on TikTok, it is LWC Coaching.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I hope you guys have an amazing week. Give yourself grace and try to just learn something new about your mind or your body this week, and make that a weekly practice. And in the year, you will be so surprised how much more equipped, confident, and secure you feel, knowing how much more you understand about yourself and the way God has literally created you. We love you, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.